Hey, I'm Sarah Poff, the multimedia storyteller, here today to tell you a story through painting with you. This story is about freedom, our freedom. Now, we celebrate the 4th of July. We all have some kind of fun, fireworks, picnics, all sorts of family get-togethers during that time, or friends. But what is it really about? This document right here. Of course, it's not the real one, it's just my copy. So what I want us to do as we paint this painting is I want us to think about what's really important for 4th of July, the fact that our country is free. Now we're going to add some fireworks, we're going to have a little fun with it, yes, you're right. And I want to do that, but I also want to always pause on 4th of July and remember what they gave up for us. All right, here's my painting. Now, of course, I put Freedom Jar 1776. You are very welcome to paint whatever you want. Just 4th of July, you know, whatever, leave it blank. That is totally fine with me. It's your painting. You do what you would like. So I try to go simple. This is color sheet-like. I use canvas board on this one. You can use a regular canvas. You could do a heavy-on watercolor paper. You could do a watercolor of this same design and just make it that true watercolor way. You could do tempera cakes. There's a lot of different ways. I've done things on poster boards before. So the main thing is we want to try to get this done in about an hour. That's our goal, and it to be your artwork to either give away or hang up for the 4th of July. So let's get started. We want to start with the dark color, and I've brought my hair dryer along, and we want to coat the dark color lightly on there, lightly. And so I've chosen craft paints to start with, because I can do them really quick and fast, and they're already mixed up for me. I don't have to use as much water. Now, I do usually buy the bigger ones. However, I happened to buy a blue I didn't really like. They had mixed too much white in it, which sometimes happens with the craft paint. I have people ask me about brushes. These are my brushes. The ones I used in an earlier painting are out here, and I just go for whichever brush I can grab. I don't like pay attention to it, well, it's this size or that size. I just use it. If you have some watercolor brushes mixed in with it, they're a little harder to use, but you can still make it happen with that too. So I'm just going to do like this. I use my Corel plates as my palette to put my paint. I try to be simple with this. You could use paper plates if you don't want to, but I like to collect the paint and make things out of it. Is why I like to do that, and I just like the way it's fun to come back into my art studio and see it. Okay, so I want to just brush this on. It doesn't have to be even as far as the color, because we know the sky has different coloring in it. I'm going to go up and down to begin with here. And then I want to go down to a little bit lower than where that grass starts. Trying to get as much of that canvas covered as I can, as fast as I can. This is called back painting, is what a lot of people refer to this. It's a way that you can do it quickly. In painting class, I was taught to, you know, put your objects in, then paint your background in the back. To do a fast painting, that's hard. But you can also do this and then let it dry if you wanted to like do it in stages. That's the good thing about having the video, is you can do it in stages. Now, because the sky tends to flow this way, we're going to go back with it. Since I've kind of got it done, I'm going to go back from left to right, right to left, it doesn't matter. I'm going to add just a teeny bit of white on that brush. I don't want much. teeny bit of white there. Okay. Now, I want to start in with my green. Let's see. Maybe hold this up for you. I want to step back on that because I realize that when I did that before, I had to repaint at the bottom where my jar is. And I had to get that jar in there. So I think what we're going to do is go a little bit lower with this. You know, sometimes you just got to pause a moment. You got to think. Think about what it is and how to make it happen. Because that's exactly what I did the first time is I did that grass there. And then I went to do the jar, and the jar didn't look like it was sitting on the grass because of how I painted it in there. All right, so I'm going to get my hairdryer, and we're going to blow this painting dry enough that we can do the next step. All right. When you make it fairly thin, it doesn't take long for that to happen. Now I have a cutout that I made for this jar. Looks like I made it a little shorter later, so I'm going to do that. It's always interesting how it looks. Okay. So now we're going to pull that down. And I want to use my pencil. I should probably use the black because you're not going to be able to see. So that way you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, so I just used a black Sharpie on it. You could probably get away with a pencil at home. Okay, now what I'm going to do next, because I want a little grass underneath here, I probably don't even have quite enough grass there. I'm going to paint a little bit of grass. I'm just going to basically paint some green in. I'm not going to worry that it looks like grass a lot right now. I'm just wanting to get a little bit so that the jar looks like it's sitting on the grass. You see, the more you do something, a lot of times the more you can correct yourself on errors you've done in the past. Okay. There we go. Now I want to dry that, and then I'm going to do the white for the outline of the jar. Now, if you're not sure if you can paint it with a little paintbrush, you could use a Sharpie. There's some other kinds of paint pens out there that you also might be able to do that with. You know, this is a choice that you can make on what you think is good. Now I'm looking for which brush I think I can paint the best with. You want a fairly little one, you want a fairly small one. And I need more white paint. See, like I say, I buy the big old containers. And then I mix most of the colors besides the basics. I usually buy I always buy the primary, and then I buy black and white, of course. And then if I'm going to do a lot of green and orange, I get those. I don't really use purple much. I can mix it. And then all the other tints and shades I just make, unless there's some huge reason to go buy more. All right, so what I want to do is I want to get this line in here. So we know that that jar is a circle. But we don't see it. It's called an ellipse. I always used to describe it when I taught school and taught art. I described it as a squashed circle. We just see part of it. So in perspective. Now, if I want to make that jar look dimensional, I'm going to need to do the other part there. And sometimes it helps even to take your finger, a dry brush, and rub across the shape you want to make before you actually commit. It's hard on the canvas, so I'm seeing the canvas lines a lot there. Okay, and then I'm going to do one in the middle here to help us see that dimension. I like to turn it sideways because I like to paint better this way. So I'm going to do like this. So it takes a little concentration to do this. I know I'm quieter than usual. Well, thank you for joining me today with this painting. This is a fun one to have for that 4th of July kind of time. This might be a fun one to have with a paint party, or maybe there's some children out there that are in your life that you could help them paint a version of this. You can always paint just part of it with the children. Okay, so let's see, I want to go here. You know, this might be, if you make these smaller, this might be something that you do have 2 or 3 together in a grouping paintings. Maybe you have some from the past that you've done, and that you have just a group of paintings at your house that you change out as seasons change. I like to put up my 4th of July kind of items at Flag Day, and then I leave them out until usually, I don't know, a lot of times I even leave them out till at the end of July, because then I start thinking about back to school items. Depends on if you like summer fun. There's also paintings that you can have that are summer fun. Some of mine are out there on Mid-Continent Public Library's website. I should say YouTube, shouldn't I? These are on YouTube. The good thing is you can stop them, you can share them. Hey, we like it when you share. And then, you know, see it multiple times. Am I the best at painting all this? Oh no, I just try. I just keep trying. You know, one of my phrases I like to say is I just throw enough mud on the wall that some of it sticks. There's multiple times in my life I've done that. I was telling some people here today about you know, I like to wear my costumey kind of thing at the beginning of the paintings, and I do that with all my programs. I have some kind of outfit on, and you know, it started when I was having a hard time getting a job. Yes, I've been a stay-at-home mom, and nobody really wanted to hire me, and I just couldn't get back into the workforce. And then one day, I simply had a brown piece of material. I cut a hole in it. It's a rectangle. I cut a hole in it, sewed it up on the sides, and threw on some other items to go with it, and put on together a little Indian program. And that started all of this. Now see, you need to round a little bit here to make it look more like the levels of where the jar would have the ridges in it. So a lot more shoring up that could be done, and a lot more of the grassy kind of area that we want to do. I think I'm going to go for the harder part first. So I'm going to put, the grass will be easy at the end. So I'm going to put some of this together. So when these go in the jar, we want to draw them in, draw them in, draw them in. So you don't want them to be seen here. I'm going to do one more ridge across this jar. Sometimes in paintings like this, we do it a little bit over-stylized. Because this is more like one that you're kind of like filling in a coloring sheet, but with paint, and then trying to learn some skills along the way. Because most people, I think, that follow this are people who are new to it, like to do it more as a craft as opposed to an art. And you got to watch out or you touch that paint that's still wet down there. Because certainly if we were to take more time than the hour, there's so many more details you could do with this. All right, so I want to take and make fireworks coming out of there. So I'm thinking about how is that going to look? How is that going to look? You can do a Sharpie too with that. Looks like that's probably what I did with that other painting. So I want 3 of them, and I want the flag to be slightly over this way, because then the rest of the flag, the pole of the flag, the rest of the flag is coming that way. So I probably should start with that. I'm going to blow dry this white so that when I lay that paintbrush there, I don't pick up white. I'm going to lay my paintbrush there. I probably want it just about as long as that. So I'm going to use this as my guide. So I dipped it in a little water. When I'm trying to paint a line like that, I kind of want to make sure this paint is just right for moving across the canvas. Okay. Now don't forget, when you get to the jar, we've got to go inside the jar. So I've not created the back line of the jar yet. And I want to come clear down here because I want it to look like it's standing in the jar. Okay, I'm going to go back over that. Okay. Okay, I want to dry a little bit. I don't know whoever thought up hair dryers, but I sure do like them. I still remember back in the 70s, because I have a mob of hair, and back in the 1970s when I first got one, oh my gosh, it changed my life. Before then, you had to leave those curlers in forever, and for people like me, it took forever to dry your hair. And nowadays, it doesn't take long at all. Well, what kind of plans do you have for your 4th of July? I love hearing about what people are doing. I'll have to be watching on YouTube and see if I see any comments. Okay. Now, need to blow dry again. And when you make something like this, odd numbers are best. They just say it looks better. And from what I have realized, I agree. I agree. Odd numbers are better. Just kind of a rule of thumb on that. Okay. So does that ever happen to you? It's not even in the jar. So we're going to go again. I was trying to place it where I thought it would look best in with the firework on the end, and that happened. So we'll see if we can't find that blue again here in a minute. I'm going to let it dry this time first, though. See if I can put it in the jar just barely. Okay, let's try this. And I don't want to be perfect at this when I do it, because I don't want you to think that you have to be perfect to be able to do art. Art is for each person to be where they are with it and just try to get better. Try to work on getting better. What pleases you? What do you enjoy? I don't like to stress out about things like that. Do I try to improve my skills? I do. I do all the time. All the time. Let's see, I painted this weekend. I painted 2 paintings this weekend. This kind, not the, where the ones that have a lot of real fine detail in them. I'm a folk artist. I'm about telling the stories. I got my storytelling certificate from this great library system that I'm working for right now for these paintings. Mid-Continent Public Library has a program where they teach about storytelling and writing or telling. Great little program they have. They have many programs that are very, very good and stretch you in all kinds of ways. Okay. Now let's see if this, I think that's dry enough for me. And I just use straight blue on that. I did squirt it right on there though. Looking for my little container of blue. There, right in front of me. Right in front of me, you can't see it. Does that ever happen to you? It's just right in front of you and you can't see it. See, this is the great thing about acrylic paint. Just paint. If you make a mistake, just paint over it. And then we'll have the fireworks there, so it won't be as big a deal, because the fireworks will be there. Now I want to go for that grass next, I think. See if we can get that grass and get a little more in here. And I want a fairly good sized brush because I want to go fast, at least in the beginning with it. I let kids use my brushes. I teach classes where there are children involved. And so sometimes that's why I do like this, because they have been the one that cleaned them out. So therefore, they haven't always done as good a job. I have a few brushes that maybe I keep back, but not too many. Like I've told you, it's just like, there's a brushes. Pick out one. Pick out what works for you. If you feel differently about that, hey, great, go for it. To me, there's not a right or wrong in it. There's what works for you. I'm going to add a little brown. So I'm making that kind of a double dip. So I dipped in green, I dipped in brown, and then I'm kind of giving it that grass kind of look, that kind of stroke. And I do want to try to fill up the canvas. I want to cover that canvas area there. So I need a little more grass in this other side there. When I actually did that, I didn't go far enough with getting it on that other side. So I need that other side, and then I need that to dry a bit, and then I need to repaint that. If you make a mistake, you just keep going forward. Sometimes it's the person who sticks with it and keeps trying that succeeds. Let's see, favorite activities for 4th of July. Mine might be a little different than yours, because I am part of Daughters of the American Revolution, and I like to go to graveyards. And I like to look for those soldiers who helped, put our country together, helped us have freedom. And even here in Missouri, there's some Revolutionary War soldiers buried around. There are in the Independence area too. I think it's in the 30, and about 30-ish that there are. There's a list I've seen. Because if those guys hadn't had the courage to fight for our country, we wouldn't have a great country that we do. All right, so I need to do blue again. I guess you're getting a good example of sometimes it just doesn't go like you wanted it to, so you have to work again at it. That's the standing back and looking. It helps with that. Stand back, look, make sure. I think I should get my blow dryer out. Okay, I'm going to dip my paintbrush in the water. I dip a lot, but I don't rinse out. I dip, and then I wipe off on the paper towels. Sometimes I use an old rag if I have one. Sometimes you have to think about what would be in front, what would be in back, because you've got to trick the eye of the person looking so that they can figure out what it is you're trying to achieve. We want that grass to look like it's on the other side. Probably I'm using a little bit too big of a brush for the white. It would probably look just a little bit better if I had chosen a different one. Now I'm going to do like this because I want the line to be there, but I want it to be a little bit lighter. I'm just going to take a little bit of it off. And then I'm going to take that blue brush. I don't want a lot of paint on it, I just want some, and I want to like fade it. See, I have just practically a dry brush for that. Okay. Now I'm going to want to do that with these two because I want to be able to write that word freedom brightly on top. So I'm going to have to touch it to the paint again, but I don't want a lot of paint. So I'm going to take most of the paint back off. I'm going to try it out, see if that's enough. It's a little slower that way, but it's kind of what you need to do to make it happen. And that's partly because this one I used silver for those. The silver Sharpie did not get placed on my table. I brought one today, but it didn't get placed on my table before I started. I just don't want that white to show up so much. That's not the important part. So I'm still doing that dry brush part. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the green. So if I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about all the sights and the sounds that are going on, all the celebration that we do. I used to work in the grocery store when I was in high school. And I remember the older lady that was my boss there, she said, like, be ready for 4th of July. And I was like, what do you mean? I knew our town had a little celebration. She's like, well, be ready before that, because the Saturday before that, everybody comes to town and buys their groceries, and it's worse than Christmas and Thanksgiving. I was like, oh, you got to be kidding. Well, she wasn't. The lines went all the way back to the store to the meat counter. I was like, whoa, she is, if she ever right, she is right. Life has so many experiences, and depending on where you live and what organizations and people you hang out with, you learn all different kinds of things. All right. A little more green. Little more green. And I need a little bit of brown in there, don't I, to kind of match it to the others. And if you get frustrated with a painting like this, just let it dry. Let it dry real good. Watch the video again and go for it again. You know, just go for it. I'll just keep trying until, you know, like I said, I keep throwing enough mud on the wall that some of it begins to stick. Some of it begins to stick. Okay. So now we need to see about that flag. So we want it to come this way. We want to drape it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I don't have, you know, the appropriate amount that should be on there, but do you realize it's a flag? Yes. And so sometimes on spacing, you can just do that, and people will realize what it is you're trying to accomplish there. You're trying to picture. So I want this to be the same angle as the bottom. It's the main thing I want to try to do. If you want to practice some waving of it, like the wind's blowing it, that, you know, that's something else that you could do. I'm just going to do it for the simplest purpose, to just do it like this. Okay, and then I'm going to draw off where those stars would be. So the vertical lines still go straight up and down on this. And the horizontal lines, you're trying to get them at that same angle each time. You just do the best you can to get them at the same angle each time. A little perspective thrown in there. Okay, start with that white. I'm going to fill in that white so it can fill in the white. Fill in the blue so it can be drying, and I can put the white stars on a little bit. Okay. See if I put another coat. I'm going to add a tad of white maybe, because I want it to be just a little bit different color, but I don't want it to be tons than the background. Okay. Now I'm going to find me a red brush. I'll start there. And I believe I got it right on the, that starts with red. Of course, if you want to make sure it's accurate, just go out there and search for it. Just go search, you'll find out. Even if we get it opposite, remember what I said about the fact that the professor said they'll know what it is. It's, I always had the kids when they would want to paint an apple. In my classroom, the little kids, they would want to paint an apple. Well, I like yellow apples. I like green apples. Well, that's great. And you need to draw an apple a little bit better maybe before you do it that way, because not everybody understands that that's an apple. But if you make it red, you put a stem on it, chances are real good that they're going to know. I'm going to add one more here. Now, because that is on top of the dark blue, I might want to wait and give it another coat. I also ought to lighten this up here or put something on top of it. I'm going to put the sparkler part, the fireworks part there. And then we've got some little fireworks around. Okay, we're doing pretty good on time. So I'm going to pick out a few brushes that are fairly small, and I'm going to see about working on one of those. See, I think I want 3 different colors maybe. Colors, colors are up to you. I'm going to squirt a little bit more paint because some of that red is getting a little dry on me. Okay, my yellow looks okay. My white looks okay. And then my blue, I need a little more blue. I'm going to start with the red, probably the red and the blue. Okay, I'm going to turn it upside down. And I don't want a big ball of paint on that. So I'm going to do, I did like this on my plate to lessen. And it's one of those where you just want to like touch and go for it. Touch and go. And just drag across whatever paint is on there. Because you don't want that line to be too thick or too big. And then you could add a few little lines in up here. Okay, this time I'm going to go this way. Whichever way your hand flows the best when you're doing some of that. You can try, experiment different ways, see how it goes for you. You also want to see about balance. This one's a little bigger than that one. How do I feel about that? I think I feel okay. I need to lighten that blue up a little bit. Try. See what this does. Because I think I took it right out of the tube there instead of, it had the canvas color in the background before, and then I put blue on top of blue. But sometimes I want you to see that I make mistakes too. I make mistakes too. It's not just you. We all do. It's kind of how do we go on after we've made a mistake? Okay. So I might even just bring that firework down a little more, and then that would help cover that area. Disguise it enough that nobody really pays attention. As long as you don't show them. I'm bad about showing them. Well, I messed up. This is how I messed up. Okay. I think the next thing I'm going to do is paint in the white, because I think I'm going to have a couple of different coats of white on this. And there's a whole study you could do on flags and how the flag hangs, and really and truly it comes out from here. It's only attached usually in two places. There's just lots of research that could be done. But what our goal today is to try to get a painting done in about an hour. A painting that you could just take and hang up and enjoy doing. And then what I will probably do with this is I will go back and I will take possibly a red Sharpie and shore up those lines. When you're doing them fast like this, you can do that. There's also some white, sometimes you can get little white markers that if you wanted to do that with the white, if you wanted to take a really small brush and sit down and just have real patience with it, you could do that. Talking about that, let's see if I can get just a little bit of this. All right. Now we'll see if I can square it off just a bit. And then I think the next thing I'm going to try to do is the stars. Now for the stars, we're only going to touch. You're going to get a brush and you're going to try out the end of how big that paints. So you want a fairly small one. And then you want your paint to be loose. The craft paint does pretty good at that. And you're just going to touch a star. Okay, since I just painted the white, I'm going to turn this upside down. And I want the rows, remember I want the rows to go the horizontal, to follow that horizontal path. So I'm going to go like this. And I'm just going to fit what comfortably fits in there. I'm not going to worry a lot about how many, or that each row even has the same. I'm just going to try to fill. All right. And what I'm going to do next is write freedom jar across here, because that's going to be a little bit harder, and the rest of that up there at the top, if we ran out of some of the time, you could do with just the different colors. Okay, so I'm going to paint it like right above that. So that's going to kind of be like my line there. And I'm going to turn it where I see it. I'm going to put this other one close so I can kind of see how my spacing worked. That's the main thing with something like this. You might want to work on what the spacing looks like. This would be a good thing to take some kind of dark paper and you write the letters first. This would be a great thing for you to use a Sharpie with. And the paint needs to have just the right touch with things like this. Some years for Christmas, I've spent way too much time personalizing. Nowadays, we have a lot of different ways that things can come personalized, but back in the day, I made money by painting teachers' names on red apples, or people's initials on ribbon. Of course, we're talking about a long time ago. The ribbons were actually in the 70s. The other was in the 80s. It's a lot easier to have things printed and cheaper. You could put Happy 4th. You could just put 4th of July. You wouldn't really have to put anything if you don't want to. I like to remind everybody that this is the birth of our country. That's what we're celebrating. My ancestor that I know from back then, that I know his name, was Henry Haynes, and his son John was also my ancestor. And Henry was like Benjamin Franklin's age. And he gave supplies to the troop. His son John fought, and they lived in Virginia. Many of us, even if you don't know whether you do or you don't, many people have an ancestor back then that did help with the cause. And I remember when I was visiting there back east, and they referred to that as the first Civil War. I was like, Civil War? Civil War? And then I got to thinking, I was like, well, that's right. That's right. Neighbor fought against neighbor. But I do appreciate the freedoms that we have here in this United States. Okay, there we go. I might go back over the freedom, make it a little darker, but that's got the basics in. And then I'm going to drag the brushes like I did before, which I'm going to do it upside down again because that's wet and I don't want to mess with it. See, I even like the texture of the canvas. You can see some of the texture there. Little texture in this spot where I kind of messed up would be a good thing. I have an idea. Let's get a little blue paint. And let's take this down just a bit. And then that way when I do those, it's not going to be quite as noticeable that was That was my mistake. Okay. Plus, I'm going to add a little glitter this time. Okay, I'm going for yellow. Now you do need a few little ones to just balance the design and make it maybe look like off in the distance there's some more going on. Do you shoot off a lot of fireworks for 4th of July? Since my asthma bothers me, I hide in the house. I used to enjoy it a lot more than I do now. All right. Now, I want little bitty ones. And I did them on the other one. I just did them one color. I just did them some little ones like this. Paint's not quite wet enough, so I'm going to dip it again. It might be fun, especially if maybe you have a child that's around that kind of wanted to help, and they've either painted this or they're just kind of watching you and kind of want to be involved. You might let them put some insects down in here. That could be a nice addition to this painting. A family painting. This could be a family painting where different people do it. Each person who comes to your house puts a little firework item in there. That's what I miss about school teaching the most, probably the elementary classroom, art classrooms. I learned so many creative ideas from the children. You know, my fixed idea of how this or that should be, they overcame. You know, I would tell them, I was like, as long as you can do it in our time limit and our supplies we have, go for it. Go for it. I want a couple of white. Try the paintbrush out. Sometimes when I'm in the midst of it, it's hard to remember. Okay, now I want to blow dry just a second, and then I got one more surprise for you. You'll see mine's a little sparkly, but I do blow dry it most of the way because too much glitter is not very good. A little bit, oh, just brings it out. And like I said, I don't put glue on it. I just kind of take a little pinch and I just sprinkle it across. This is that, I think they call it the polyester kind of glitter, that really light. I think some people maybe put this kind on their face when they're doing face decorations. Okay, do you see it? All right. I want to put that lid on that glitter because I don't want to have to clean up all that glitter in my studio here. All right, well, this is Sarah Poff, the multimedia storyteller, and there's our painting.